Hello there. Hello there. First off, let me show you a little cool lick I learned on guitar recently. Let's see. We'll zoom closer. Just need to find the right button with another camera. And I'll show you what I learned. Right. Just a little lick I spotted on one of Paul David's absolutely awesome guitar tutorials recently. I think it was a video called Top 5 Smoking Hot Bluesy Licks. Killer stuff. There's loads of content available on Paul's channel. So a warm recommendation if you haven't yet checked the Paul David's channel, YouTube channel out. I'm a big fan, so check it out. And thank you, Paul, for teaching me this cool lick among others. And we'll move on. Let's go. Welcome to my weekly Wednesday live episode 46. Year 2021, October 13th at 9 p.m. EET, Eastern European Time, that is. And today, I'm totally stepping outside my comfort zone. Admit it. A reaction video. I've never done one and I feel quite uncomfortable about this. I admit it. But this particular video, the 5-step setup by Paul Davids, the same guy who had instructed that little lick that I just played to you. And this video, the 5-step setup by Paul Davids, it has been pointed out to me by several people. First time about a year ago when Paul published the video first time or published it. I mean, there hasn't been a second time, I guess, one time. I watched it then, and I have watched it basically quite a few times. Every time someone has mentioned it. And this video has over 1.1 million views, so it's very popular. In other words, and just by the 57,000 likes versus about a few hundred dislikes, the video has been very well liked as well. And yet, every time I watched it, I feel like I have to say something, but well, that's why we're here. And okay, I confess I have not read the thousands of comments below the original video, the 5-step setup video, though. Maybe I should have. But on the other hand, this is my reaction to Paul's take on things. So, So, also my apologies if I happen to violate against some kind of an unspoken YouTuber etiquette. Or spoken, if it's spoken, if it's unspoken, I don't know. I'm not really a YouTuber. I'm doing this, but so if I'm doing something unorthodox here, please, you guys, YouTubers that would see this, maybe even Paul Davids, maybe you will watch the video one day. Please correct me if I did something wrong. I don't want to do it again. If that's the case, if that would be the case. And I'll add that this video of mine, it is of course done in positive intentions and not in order to belittle or understate Paul's great achievements as a YouTuber. As mentioned, I love his channel and I'm a subscriber as well. I'm one of the 2.5 million subscribers. I'm one of the guys. So supporting the channel. All right. Let's dig in. My name is Juha Ruokangas, your humble servant on a mission from the gods, from the goddesses of fretted instruments. You and you So, you know, here we go. Actually, before we go, let me say hi to people. Tuomas, Mibu, Damien, Vincent, Deja Voodoo, Peter, Poo Ninja. Glad to see you here. Okay, so here my pressure goes up at this moment. Peter says, hi Juha and everyone, I'm a fan of Paul's channel, so excited about this video. I'm getting more and more nervous. Oh God. Okay, so anyway, here we go. Without further ado, let's just get this over with. All right.
This guitar sounds great and it plays good, but I wanted to play great. And there's two more guitars with some issues that I can easily fix. I want my guitars in their best shape, and I guess you feel the same about your guitar. So here's my 5-step foolproof method of setting up guitars at home so they play and sound like a dream. But beware, what we're about to do is extremely dangerous and can seriously damage the... It's not dangerous at all. Everyone can do this with very little tools even. And the best of it all, it's free. For this video, I'm assuming your guitar has no major structural flaws like tormented necks, cracks or other weird issues. And if so, it may still very well be safe, but I suggest bringing it to a luthier instead. You're okay? Other than that, let's get started. And we're gonna have a look at this Novo Ceres.
Cool guitar. All right, well, goes without saying that everything about Paul's videos, I mean, look at it. They're just the technical execution of it. It's just superb. He's a fun guy, very articulate, easy to follow. The video looks and sounds great, very entertaining, like watching a movie, you know. So yeah. So this is one of the aspects I of course also love Paul's videos about, because they are so absolutely killer, done like movies. So it's a joy to watch. All right, so we move on.
The first thing I noticed was that the action was a little bit too high for my own preference. I like it low. So the action is the distance measured from the bottom of the string to the top of the fret. And for this generally goes the lower, the easier it is to play. But when you get too low, the worse it'll sound. Notes will sustain less long, notes can fall dead, and we can introduce fret buzz. We don't want any of that, so it's a delicate play between playability and a good sound.
Nothing against, just mentioning, fully agreeing with Paul. Good job so far, so we move on.
If you want to go the easy route, we can just see if lowering the saddles will fix everything, and we're back to shredding in no time. So we're measuring the gap at fret 12, or a method that's generally a little bit better. We put a capo on fret 1 and we measure the gap at fret 17. This way we eliminate the nut height of the guitar, so we get a more accurate read. Generally, both measurements will give you the same results. So the following...
Okay. No biggie, but this is a little bit confusing. Eliminating the nut to read the action at this point. First thing in the beginning of a setup as the kind of one of the early steps of a five-step setup. Yeah, referring to Paul's claim of a 5-step foolproof method. Yeah. So to me, it looks like what happened now.
Very personal.
Okay, there's a measurement. It's just the video looks so funny. It just thought I made something funny going on with the video. Yeah, to me anyways, it looks like he starts his method, his 5-step foolproof method, from the wrong end. Because I feel this might not be the first step of a 5-step setup. Or Okay, I give it to Paul. This is what a lot of players would like to do first when they notice the action is too high. But I've talked about this on my truss rod adjusting videos. But without further analyzing, let's watch a bit further before I say anything more. Yeah.
Well, I like my action on the 6th string, the thickest, to be around 1.5 millimeters, and for the high string goes around 1 millimeter. On the left we see the measurements in millimeters, the metric system; on the right the imperial system in inches. But I gotta admit, I never measure the action at all. You should always strive for getting a good playing guitar and not try hitting a number. But if you're new to measuring or setting up the action, it may be a very good indication of getting in the right ballpark. So usually you will see higher values recommended, so don't take this as an advice, but getting a guitar that plays like butter often makes it sound like butter too, but feel free to go a little bit higher if that feels right for you. Anyway,
Agreed. The action of the guitar definitely is a subjective matter of taste, so there's no right number how to set the action. And also, I like Paul's take on, that he shows some measurements that, what is his preference, but at the same time mentions that he's not measuring with these tools, he's just looking for that right feel, which is, I think, what a lot of people, when you kind of get climatized, when you get your routine in doing the setup of your guitar, this is something that will develop pretty naturally. So it's not there is mathematics behind it, but you don't need to think of it as mathematics. You don't need to take it quite so seriously, quite so literally, because there is no right and wrong in these things, in this particular area. All right, we're moving on.
Lowering the saddles of the bridge with this Allen wrench. Don't overdo it. Try half a turn at first. On this guitar we can adjust every single string, so I'm going to do that right now. And I've got some more experience with this, so I'm just doing a whole turn from the get-go and see how that sounds. Always remember how much you turn so you can go back to the original position you started from if everything goes south. That goes for every adjustment we make in this video. Always write it down how much you change so you can always go back. So a whole turn on every screw. Depending on the kind of bridge, it can look different. On the Gibson Tune-o-matic bridge you only get 2 adjusting points. I now lowered the action, retune the guitar. Wow. I think the action is a little bit too low for my own preference actually. But still no dead spots. That's how I check, just play the chromatic scale everywhere. And I suggest always checking for buzz with an amp. A little bit of buzz without an amp isn't that bad. If it's not amplified, you won't hear it playing on an amp. See? So now I'm measuring just below 1.5 millimeters on the 6th string, the low E string, and around 1 millimeter on the high E. I'm happy with this. I may do some refinement off camera, but I'm very close to how I like it.
Okay, this is all good. As said, the action is a personal preference, so no objections of any kind. What Paul is doing there, the numbers Paul mentions are on the low end of the spectrum, as he also clarified in the video. But yeah, it's all good. It's just that thinking of on a general level, it's just that this whole thing is going backwards altogether. Thinking of a 5-step setup. He's starting from setting the action from the saddles, which is backwards. Well, we'll get to it in more detail. Yeah. Which button to press? Here.
The guitars, it's a little different. For this Atkin acoustic, I'm measuring an action of just above 3 millimeters, and you guessed it, that's too high for me. So I'm carefully taking out the saddle of the bridge and going to sand it down twice the amount I want the action to be lowered. So I'm taking off around 1.5 millimeters of the saddle. You can use a file or sandpaper or both, and make sure to check in between. I'm happy. I'm finishing it off with the finest sandpaper I've got and place it back. Let's see. That's 2.5 millimeters. Perfect.
Okay, the fact that Paul took the acoustic guitar, he noticed, he measured that the action was too high and went ahead sanding down the saddle. Now, okay, so that's a mistake. Do not do this as the first step of setting up your guitar. Do not do this as the first step. 5-step foolproof method, and this is the first step. No, not good. This is in fact doing it in this order. It's one of those not so rare reasons why players bring their guitars to a pro, a luthier, us or someone else. People have gone ahead and they see that, oh, my guitar has a high action, and sands down the saddle, and then in some cases problems are getting worse because it's not the saddle that is the problem. Because he's not, Paul is not even checking anything else first. So it's going backwards. So doing this, what he now showed without checking certain other things first, problems may get worse instead of better. So I'm happy Paul was lucky and seems to, he got his acoustic guitar tweaked okay, but the bottom line, it's going backwards. It's going backwards. Setting the action from the saddles, be it electric guitar or acoustic guitar, this should not be the first step of a 5-step foolproof setup tutorial. Okay, so, yeah. That's what I have to say about that part.
But this isn't always how it goes though. Sometimes you find that the slots in the nut aren't filed down deep enough. Especially on the lower end guitars, this happens a lot. This makes playing in the lower register very hard because the strings are so far apart from the frets. The only solution for this is get a set of slot files and file them down till it feels great. But be careful, because you can't go back easily. You can with some glue and some residue, but it's very hard. And also you gotta have the right movement and the right angle. So it's a tricky thing. You might want to see a luthier for this. Anyway, but sometimes when you think everything is right, you still can't get the action low enough without introducing dead notes or fret buzz. And this is the time we take a look at the neck. And now we're off.
Okay, so what Paul says here is basically that if the steps he mentioned, adjusting the saddles or filing the knot, didn't help, essentially if nothing else helps, then it's time to look at the neck adjustment. Now, with all due respect, Paul, I love your guitar tutorial videos, and I think your YouTube channel is absolutely priceless. It's brilliant. But what you just said basically tells me that you don't really know what you're talking about here. It's going backwards. The first two things you always do when doing a setup, a 3-step, 5-step, 10-step, however small steps you want to break it down to. The first two things are always, you tune up the guitar to pitch, and 2, you check the neck. You check the relief of the neck. The truss rod adjustment, in other words. You always do that first before touching the saddles of an electric guitar, and especially before sanding down your acoustic guitar saddle. The nut slots fall into the same category. Do not file in this, Paul was pretty clear that you should have a pro check it up if it feels like the nut slots are too high, which I full-heartedly agree upon. But Yeah, do not file the slots before checking the neck either. If you got such an idea, which Paul, I don't think he suggested that, but anyways, he did kind of say that if even that doesn't help and if the saddle doesn't help, then it's time to look for the neck. Well, anyway, guys, I've been doing this. I've been making guitars. I've been repairing, adjusting guitars for my living for 26 years, and this 5-step setup is really seriously backwards, and I find it and I find it frustrating because the video is so well made, it has so much views, and at the same time it's backwards, and it's so well made video. I mean, it could be made in the right order, and then it would be so much more helpful to you to kind of learn the whole the story of how to set up a guitar, the narrative of in which way you should set it up, and why in certain order. All right, let's carry on, and we will see where this goes.
Guitar number 2, because that guitar has that issue. Let's get the Gibson SG. So when I took this Gibson home, I changed the strings, and after doing so, a few notes fell dead on the lower part of the neck. You see? Over here is good, but over here, okay. Some might be very scared of seeing a guitar like this, and actually it hurts my heart a little bit too. The neck was almost perfectly straight. That's the way the guitar tech from that shop had it set up. And I guess the new strings had a different kind of tension on the neck, and that causes this issue. So let's get to it. If you're as fond as guitar bending as I am, you know that the string pull of just one string can be pretty high already. But just imagine putting all those strings on the neck, all trying to bend the neck forward. And you can imagine putting heavier strings or thinner strings on heavily impacts that tension on the neck. So now let's introduce the truss rod. It's a rod running in the neck that we can adjust so we can get the neck in the perfect position. So what is perfect? Well, the neck can basically be in 3 states. It can be perfectly straight, which is tricky to get right, but isn't necessarily bad. It is how this guitar was set up. A back bow, which is always bad. And an up bow. And this is what we want, a real minimal up bow, so the string can ring freely when it's fretted on the neck. When the guitar is tuned up, a string is always perfectly straight. So when the neck has a slight up...
I'll stop there for a moment. Excellent explanation from Paul. Love it. This is exactly right, spot on, perfectly articulated explanation of the string tension, the effect of different gauges, the back bow, up bow, straight neck. So it's, you know, good stuff about what is the truss rod about.
There should be a little bit free play between the string and the frets in the middle. So let's put a capo on fret 1 again. So it's not only made for Wonderwall, also for guitar tacking. If I now fret the fret at the highest point where the neck meets the body, the string is perfectly straight. Now in the middle there should be free play. And a good way to check that is just hitting the string. You should hear a clacky sound because the string flicking on the neck. You see there's no sound at all. The string is now lying flat on the frets, meaning the guitar is having a back bow. Luckily we can easily fix this, but we gotta keep our mind at it. So imagine that the strings are trying to pull the neck this way, right? And by fastening the rod, we pull the neck the other way around. So by loosening the truss rod, we give in to the strings, so the neck becomes more an up bow. And by fastening the truss rod, we counter the string pull the other way around. So if you just think about it like that, it's easy to remember. So
okay, again, very well explained by Paul. I have only one slight detail to criticize, not even criticize, but to add. But let's see if he notices it himself. Okay.
We create more of a back bow, left, we create more of an up bow. So the truss rod on this SG is tightened too fast since there is a back bow. So righty-tighty, lefty-loosey again. Let's turn this one left. And always do it with small increments. 1/4, Hoppa. Retune the guitar. Let's see if we fix some of the issues. Wow. Wow. So the problem is almost entirely gone now. Amazing. There's a little bit of buzz still. Maybe you can hear it without a guitar. So I'm giving it 1/8 of a turn. And that should be it. Final check. Beautiful. You see how such a small turn does so much to the guitar. That's it. So on your guitar, the truss rod may be adjusted with an Allen wrench. Always be a little bit careful when adjusting the truss rod. If it doesn't move or there's too much friction, don't overdo it, don't over tighten it, because it can damage the guitar. It always should feel very natural and should move easily. So we can also measure the gap with feeler gauges, but that's not as easy as it sounds. I prefer the tap test. So let's see if there is a gap right now. Ah, yes. Do you hear the tapping sound? Between the string and the neck. Let's do it over here. Yeah, there's two. So.
Yeah, okay, so that slight word of advice for, for Paul and you guys, while it's perfectly okay to check neck curvature, the radius, like Paul shows here, and this is kind of, well, it's not nitpicking. It's still real, I think. It's still better to do this, what he's doing now, in the playing position, rather than having the guitar lay flat on the bench. Why? Because of gravity. With some guitars, you'd find there's a nice relief when the guitar lays flat like that on the bench, like on the video, but when picked up to playing position, it could be kind of more or less flat at that situation, or not enough relief in any case. So the situation changes, depends on the guitar neck. The flatter, the smaller the neck, and basically like a good rigid neck, there's no big difference, but there would always be a slight measurable difference. So it's the best routine would be to do these things in playing position rather than the guitar laying flat on the bench. But I think, yeah, all in all, the nitty-gritty stuff, as I said, aside, all in all, what Paul says here about adjusting the truss rod, it's all good stuff, and I'm sure a lot of players have found it extremely helpful. And thanks to Paul's great articulation and easy, relaxed, enjoyable manner of being in front of the camera, and such a pleasant person, media person he is. So it's just it's good stuff to follow, easy to follow. Yeah. So okay, we're moving on.
We fixed the neck. Awesome. So if there's too much of an oboe, so too much space in between the strings, frets can buzz at the higher registers. So we need to fasten the truss rod a little bit more to see if the neck comes down a little bit. So if you fix the neck, it's time to get back to the action and see if there's some things we can do. It's always a play between the neck and the action, to get it all right. Anyway, let's move on to another adjustment that makes all the difference. And let's do that on the Strat, because I was noticing some serious issues. And I'm talking about the intonation. So this is basically that the pitch of every note is the pitch that it should be. Sounds logical, right? But it's not always that easy. So if you hit that high note and it sounds a little bit too sharp, or you play a chord higher up the neck and it sounds like out of tune, that's probably an intonation issue. There's literally nothing more annoying. So how do we fix that? So at the bridge of the guitar, we see these saddles, and they are movable. And by doing so, we make the string longer or shorter. And basically what we do is make sure that fret 12 is exactly in the middle of the string. So smack a new set of strings on there so we can get clear measurements, tune it up, and play fret 12. Fret and play it gently, just like you're about to hit that like button, right? And now play the harmonic too. So we play the note, we fret it, fret 12, gently. Now we play the harmonic. So it should be identical in pitch. And if you don't trust your ears...
Okay, two things. One, it's really good that Paul mentioned briefly that in the beginning of the intonation setting, that you always have a fresh set of strings when adjusting the intonation. That's important. With old, worn down strings, the result can be very different. Sometimes you can't even get the intonation adjusted with worn down strings. And even in the best case with worn down strings, it's going to be off. It's not going to be right. So this is good. And number two, while I'm here, nitpicking again, you should do this step also as somebody who said it. Deja Voodoo brought it out. Let's bring it in. Deja Voodoo says internet with a guitar and a playing position. Yeah, so that's right. You should do this step also in playing position rather than the guitar laying flat on a bench. Same reason as mentioned earlier, gravity. When the guitar lays flat on a bench, the action will be slightly higher than it would be in playing position. It will be slightly higher, and this affects to the intonation setting as well. No biggie, but anyways.
Just use a tuner. So I'm hearing the fretted note is too low. We go up in pitch when you play the harmonic. So the string is too long right now. Because the longer the string, the lower the note. The shorter the string, the higher the note. So what we need to do to make the fretted note a little bit higher is move the saddle that way. Very easy, and this may look different depending on the kind of bridge you've got. I suggest lowering the string a little bit so the saddle has more free play to move. And just turn it so that the saddle moves towards the headstock. Just do it with small increments. Tune up again, and let's see if we're more in the ballpark. That's pretty close. Maybe it's a little bit too low still. So you see, check, readjust, check again, till you're spot on, and now we do so for every string. And now your guitar will sound in tune, no matter where you play on the neck. High and low. More or less. It's still a guitar.
Oh, yeah, again, I think Paul explained this step very clearly, how to do the intonation setting. I love the way he puts it. Also the fact that he's not taking it too seriously, as we saw there just a second ago. More or less in tune, it's still a guitar. And let's remember this also when you're watching my reaction video. Let's not take my reaction video also so seriously. Sometimes it's I'm picking on a detail. Other times I feel there's maybe more substance in what I'm more solid ground on what I'm criticizing about. But anyway, so let's remember these are big toys for grown-up boys and girls, not more, not less. So no reason to take them too seriously. But knowing, because I watched this video several times, knowing what's coming next, I can say that what we just saw is kind of going backwards again. And you'll find out soon why.
Anyway, so the following is something that I discovered a while ago. It's the pickup height, number 4. So many pickups just sound so much better when they are a bit lower than usually prescribed. And that includes factory setup too. And maybe it has to do with the fact that volume generally impresses more than an actual good tone. So if you're comparing two guitars in the store and the one sounds louder, you automatically think that will sound better. But let's do the test with the Gibson ES335, since I didn't change those pickups yet. I saw that these were fairly high at the moment, much closer to the strings than my Les Paul, for example. So let's see what happens when we adjust them. So adjusting pickups is super easy. Each pickup has 2 screws, and just turn them down. And always remember how many turns you did. So I'm lowering them by 4 whole turns. And I recorded this guitar earlier, so let's see how it compares. lowered the pickups significantly, and I gotta say the pickup sounded nicer, a little less spiky and more balanced. Also, these magnets negatively impact the strings, the vibrating of the strings. So the less that happens, the better. Just remember the position you started from as always, so you can always bring it back up, but lower it till it starts to sound thin, and then bring it up a notch, and you're set. What comes out may shock you, so really try it yourself as well. Leave in the comments what your experiences are with that. So next up, and that's maybe the most important.
Okay, as a singled out piece of advice, what we just saw with adjusting the pickups, I found this step, this one, setting the pickups, lowering the pickups, to be really brilliant and too often overlooked. I mean, as you noticed, adjusting the pickup height affects to the sound a lot. Well, Paul's playing is great, and that's one of the reasons why I love his videos. I mean, it's so enjoyable to and watch him play. It's so effortless and so relaxed. And
the day-to-day. Number 1, fastening the bolts.
What did I do? I pressed something I didn't realize. Yeah, so anyways, you can literally, by adjusting the pickups, you can literally save a lot of money by rather adjusting the existing pickups of your guitar than rushing out to buy more powerful, less powerful, this or that, if you're looking for a different sound. So yeah, it's a great piece of advice from Paul in that regard. As I mentioned, as a singled out piece of advice, what can you do to improve the sound of your guitar? But he mentions that an important aspect that actually again sort of reveals the backwardness of his 5-step setup video. See, Paul says that the magnetic field can affect the vibration of the strings in a negative way if the pickups would be set too close. And this is all true, but he doesn't mention in detail what is that negative effect. Well, it's two things. It's one, if the pickups are too close, the sustain of the notes suffer. Typically, more the sustain will suffer the higher up on the fretboard you're playing. If the pickups are too high, and two, the intonation can be totally off if the pickups are too high, because the magnetic field will affect the vibrations of the strings so much. And yeah, so this that he kind of mentions the magnetic field, and the pickup shouldn't be too high, and yet he introduced this step to us as the 4th step after doing the intonation. Okay, he did it to another guitar, which is kind of confusing because you don't get that timeline of doing a full setup to one guitar. But anyways, if this is a 5-step setup, it should be always done. Adjusting the pickup should be always done before adjusting the intonation, not after. So let's watch how the video ends.
Super important. When I was still teaching, you wouldn't believe the amounts of loose washers, bolts and screws I saw, and by itself it isn't too much of a problem, but it can eventually turn into way bigger problems. So here's a few things to regularly check and avoid. Number 1, the strap button. So if these become loose, they will start to wiggle, and the small wiggle will turn into a bigger wiggle until eventually it will literally fall out of the guitar, meaning your instrument is on the floor and the strap is hanging over your neck, and we don't want that, right? And another classic, the output jack, or the output is loose and wiggles. Not too much of a deal, you say, until the solder joints will become loose because all of that wiggling and your signal is gone. And if I learned one thing, is that happens the minute you step on that stage. Next up, loose washers and screws on the tuners, and this can cause major tuning instability. Check them and make sure to not over tighten these. Be careful. Other than that, there's cleaning the fretboard. Definitely not my favorite thing, but this is what I use. I've got bottles of random sprays and oils. This one is very good. The magic potion. I have no idea what's in it, but I got it from my luthier. From Hire Guitar, shout out. So just do it whenever you change the strings. Rub some oil in and just rub away the excess dirt. Do it gently, don't damage the woods. I use a microfiber cloth for this, dirty. And use some general guitar care bottles that will treat your guitar. If you take care of your guitars as gently as you're about to hit that like button, we're all set. Leave your top guitar care tips in the comments or share your thoughts about whatever you want down below. And maybe this is a good time to say how much I appreciate this community we've been building over the past few years. We're closing in on 2 million and it's just amazing. Thank you so much. Catch you guys in the next one.
Okay. This one, when Paul named general maintenance, well, it's not really the fifth step of a 5-step foolproof setup, is it? Nothing wrong with any of the maintenance tasks. He talks about every piece of advice: tightening the screws, bolts, jack, cleaning the guitar. All of it is very good and useful to mention. So totally fine with that. Maybe except the vague way he kind of rushes through it in a way. He talks about oiling the fretboard and shows it with strings on, which is not the best way. He mentioned when you're changing strings, so that maybe he meant that way, but showing it this way maybe can be confusing to some, because if you do it with the strings on, you'll end up smudging the strings to the oil. So yeah, and I would have added perhaps to this category how to clean a crackling pot or switch, but oh well, nitpicking again really. So I'll leave it to that, and we'll move on to the final conclusions. Okay, all right. So the positives. There are plenty of good things in this video by Paul Davids. Generally speaking, nothing seriously wrong with any of the mentioned 5 steps when singled out to 5 individual tasks you can do to your guitar. So everything is well explained. Great video quality, much better than I've ever done or we've ever done with our. It's just so pro everything Paul does. Well, he's a professional YouTuber with I don't know, 100 or 1,000 times more viewers than my videos. I don't know, very much more viewers. But so all of it is technically great. Great video quality with close-ups to make it all extra clear. And in that regard, it's good job. Extra points for mentioning the pickup height adjustment and demonstrating the sound differences, which really made a difference, because just talking about it it's just talk words, and but by showing it, look, this is what happens, this difference, and you kind of get it immediately. Maybe some might like, I liked more the more massive sound and a bit more kind of a muddier sound when the pickups were closer to the strings, but while other one might like or prefer to have them the same way. Paul ended up liking them more. So again, there's not right and wrong here, except that with the pickups you can get them, you can adjust them too high, and then you will notice problems with intonation, problems with the sustain, and things like that. And then to the negatives, well, I've already pointed out that it's all backwards. It's not a 5-step setup really. It's more like 5 maintenance things that you can do to your guitar, but not in any particular thought out routine or order, or protocol in a way. It is fair to mention, though, this I noticed from Paul's video, from the comments from the top of he had pinpointed his own comment to the top of the video comments of the 5-step setup video, that he does address some of this, added to the video afterwards, saying that you should check the neck before doing this and that. But I don't know how many read those comments. So as said, this is my honest reaction to Paul's 5-step setup video, not taking into account explanations or comments added after the fact. What was also a bit confusing was the even though it's cool and it's entertaining that Paul had 5 guitars and he demonstrated these steps every time changing the guitar on those separate guitars, which it further breaks down the narrative of a 5 step setup apart. I mean, I feel it kind of breaks it apart, because in real life, no matter which one of those 5 guitars he picked up, the same routine should have been mentioned, at least. If not done, at least mentioned, like check the neck first of every guitar before moving on to the rest of it. The idea of having 5 guitars in order to demonstrate the steps it's neat, and it makes the video in some ways, it does make it more entertaining and fun to watch, like, eye candy cool guitars. Yeah, but I think it kind of did it, compromise the idea of doing a 5-step foolproof setup, which this video, in my opinion, was not. The final conclusion, the video reveals to me that while Paul is an extremely skilled professional as a guitarist, as a guitar teacher, and a very pleasant media person, I find he maybe did, underestimate a little this task, setting up a guitar. And I feel the video can be a bit misleading, especially if titled as a 5-step setup when it's clearly not that. And why is it not that? Well, when doing the setup, there is a very clear, unambiguous routine, a protocol to follow, and the steps are in certain order for a reason. And it goes somehow like this. First, if you're doing a full, and this is now broken into a little bit more parts, but I keep it really simple. I'm not going into doing a full setup, but we've done some of these steps in my videos. We haven't done all of them. But we'll do it. We'll do it all the steps when time comes. So I'll just run through the protocol, how to do a setup. But first, you remove the strings. Second, you do all that general maintenance stuff Paul talked about as the 5th step. You oil the fretboard, you clean the guitar, you clean crackling pots and things when the strings are not there. Sometimes you need to lift a pick guard so you can't have the strings on when you're cleaning pots, and so on and so forth. So you do all this stuff. The second part, and after you've done all that and the guitar is clean, especially the area under the strings, and the fretboard is oiled and the headstock face is clean, you restring, you tune up. That's not, 3, restring. 4, tune up the guitar. And 5, you adjust the truss rod relief, in other words. And after that, never before, after that, you adjust the action. Remember, truss rod first, then you adjust the action, then you adjust the pickup height when you have the action where you want it, and after the fact of having these done, having the neck right, the action where you want it, the pickup height where you want it, then you only after then you adjust the intonation, not before any of these mentioned steps. Okay, and the last step, you play, you noodle, you confirm by playing the guitar that you like it now with the adjustments you've done, that nothing feels weird about it, Okay, so that was kind of 9 steps, but anyways, always do it in that order, because if you start from action, that's just not the way to go. Why? Well, let's say your guitar was okay a month ago, and now you notice the action is too high. You follow me? You've been playing the guitar, it was fine, last week it was still fine, and now you notice, oh wow, the action is too high, or maybe the action is too low. And what do? No, you don't go to adjust the saddles. The saddles haven't moved by themselves. If the guitar was okay a week ago, a month ago, and now it isn't, I bet that the saddles have not moved on their own if you haven't turned those screws. Much more likely the neck position has changed and the problem goes away by correcting that adjustment, not some other adjustment. And so oftentimes the adjusting the neck is the only thing you need to do, because the other things don't. If you're using the same string gauge, you change a fresh set of strings, but you use the same brand, the same gauge, and let's assume that this brand has somewhat stable quality strings with when set to set, the intonation things don't change. Like in some smaller brand strings, they tend to do that. Not one set is the same as the next set, but let's assume that the strings stay somewhat the same. Changing new strings and checking the neck are those 2 things that you'd be kind of kind of accustomed to doing and checking, and then the rest of it is more like a bigger thing, doing the full setup. Yeah. and so I think I think someone there on internet, I think I noticed this somewhere. They call this kind of setup routine with the term TRAIN, like train. TRAIN, like 1 tune, 2 relief, 3 action, 4 intonation, 5 noodle. Trying the guitar, finding out if it's good, after the setup. TRAIN. Yeah. So that was narrowed down 5 steps again. So streamlining a bit what I told about the 9 steps. But yeah, so that's in both cases, that's the gist of it. Do it in that order, and you develop a good habit for yourself. You learn to understand your instrument better, and analyzing a potential problem in your guitar becomes easier over time too, when you have this basic understanding of the routine and the reasoning why you're doing that routine in that order, in that particular order. What comes to sanding down the saddle of your acoustic guitar, it is a step that you might want to consider not doing yourself, but rather have a luthier do it for you. Nothing wrong, though. I give it to Paul here. Nothing wrong if you want to give it a try, but just please be aware that there are certain risks involved. Like you might sand it too low, and having a new saddle made will then cost more than having the original shaped down by a pro. Also, if your guitar has an under saddle pickup, it's crucial that the bottom of the saddle is dead straight and in right angle to get an even pressure, so all strings are amplified with equal volume. And the way Paul was rather rushing through sanding the saddle on a material, on a piece of paper, that things didn't look so kind of rigid and 90 degrees and that all stays dead straight. Yeah, so they're doing it home this way. You can also improve the methods when doing them home, and so I'm not trying to discourage you to not learn these more parts of setting up your guitar, where I feel that it's kind of borderlining, becoming a hobby repairs guy or not. When you're buying files to file your guitar, file the nut slots, and when you're doing these things, it's not something that I would recommend to everyone, because I've just seen what can happen, and so the result ends up costing much more money. Those files are very expensive as well. The nut slot files. It's a decent set of those files is several hundreds of dollars. So it's not like. So you need to then consider it as becoming a hobby, and that's a whole different ballgame. It's a good hobby, and go for it if that's what you like. But I would not include these, sanding down the acoustic guitar saddle, sanding, filing the nut slots deeper. I would not include these into a basic setup that every guitarist should, consider doing. Paul did mention that it might be a good idea to not file down the nut slots, to which I full-heartedly agree. And again, I'm not trying to scare you though. If you're that do-it-yourself person, of course it's okay to do it. You learn by doing. That's what we all do. It's no rocket science. It's not something that you could not master. Of course you can. It's just a matter of there's certain things that every player, it's good to kind of gather an understanding that you could do basic things, like you can tune your guitar. Adjusting the truss rod, I put it into that same category with tuning the guitar when you start playing. But I do not consider filing the nut slots. I don't consider that to be in that same category of doing the setup. Yeah, so yeah, go for it. Whichever path works for you. Now I'm gonna look at some comments. Also sending regards to Paul. I hope he watches this video. I really hope, and I'm kind of scared at the same time. I said I love your channel, Paul. I mean, that's why I bothered to even do this video in the first place. You know, out of love for guitars, love for music, contributing to the community of guitar makers. You know, so that people could understand better their instruments. And well, Paul, if you would ever consider making an updated version of your 5-step setup video, any tips on this video are in your use. Obviously, so goes without saying. And yeah, even though I was kind of nervous about doing this reaction video, whatever you call it, because I don't particularly enjoy criticizing videos others have made with great effort. You know, I think my commentary still, hopefully it serves a common purpose you, Paul, and I both share. So I hope if you watch this that you're not super angry that I did this, because I'd rather be your friend when eventually our paths, we haven't met face to face, but when eventually our paths cross sometime somewhere at a show or wherever. So, you know, what are we getting here? We are getting some spam. This is the first time we're getting spam. Okay, I have to get that stuff off later. Spam chat messages. Yeah, eventually our paths might cross sometime somewhere. And as said, I love your channel. Keep up the awesome work you do, serving the guitar loving community. And I'm gonna check some of the comments here. Okay. Old Man Henderson, the one with the trousers. I love your screen name. This might be the first reaction video that doesn't make me want to punch everyone involved. Thank you. I appreciate that. That certainly couldn't be further from what I wanted to achieve with the video. Peter, Juha, this was great reaction, constructive and on point. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Okay, Poo Ninja says, I had set up my own instruments for years. I've been very happy. When I bought my Harley Benton, it has a couple of high frets, not to destroy it. I took it to luthier for setup. I couldn't be happier. Well, as said, I mean, this is stuff that we need to understand that when you take a guitar to a professional, they're making their living out from that. That's what they do for their living. So the maintenance, the guitar repairs guy, the luthier, the tech asks for the work. You know, there's a cost, and for a very ununderstandable reason, of course, there's a cost. And at the same time, I'm always encouraging everybody to learn the basic steps of a setup of a guitar. I put out one very primitive, not technical point of view, not to be compared at all. Different planet, technically speaking, from Paul David's beautifully executed and edited video. I did one video with my son, the Zen and the Art of Guitar Maintenance. We did a setup for his guitar. But this was the video that sparked the idea of making kind of splitting the setup into different phases of work and putting out short videos to the point, changing strings, adjusting the truss rod and so on. We haven't gotten very far with it, but we're working on it. So anyways, in the meanwhile, there are others that other good videos online, and Paul David's video is also among them. And as said, there are great points in this video, and I would see it very useful for many people. It's just that the kind of the bird perspective of what is a full setup to a guitar, it kind of gets lost with changing the guitar and doing the steps in what appears to me to be more like arbitrary order rather than a planned script of a full setup. So that's my kind of biggest concern on that video. All right, so yeah, people are commenting about the trolls, but just block and report. I will do that. I just don't know how to do it here. I'm not watching this with you guys, the live. I'm doing this from my streaming software, and I don't know how to block and report right now. But after the fact, I will definitely do that. Yeah, so let's take one more comment. Ilka Koski says, 4 out of 6 of my cheap guitars had neck problems I couldn't solve, but was too afraid of the luthier cost to solve them before finding out if they would have made fine guitars. Well, now you don't know. Now you don't know. You made that decision, and you know it's one decision. And next time you might try something else. But I can tell you, a lot of luthiers, a lot of repair shops, if you show up with a guitar and ask for a quotation, like, could you please look at my guitar and tell what it costs? So oftentimes it's surprising that, you know, setting up a guitar, it isn't that expensive at a luthier shop. So, you know, so it's not like hundreds and hundreds when you don't start to refret and things like that. But anyways. Okay, so Jonas says, great video. I like that you're nice and just want to help people. You have a lot of great advice. Thank you. I'm trying my best. I'm trying, and I'm hoping that I'm not making Paul Davids, whom I admire greatly. I hope I'm not making him angry with my video. That's maybe my personal biggest concern at the moment, because I've never done this kind of a reaction video. All right, that's about it. We're over 1 hour. It's 2 minutes past 10 p.m. here in Finland, and that's about it for this Wednesday. Next week I'll be doing a live interview. Once again, a guitarist, a friend, an awesome human being. Most of you are familiar with already. Those of you who have been following my channel. I'll be interviewing Mika Tyyske, also known by his alter ego, Mr. Fastfinger. We'll talk about it's a little bit. One time we did a video with him where actually I think we were on that video. We were talking about playing fast and how to learn to play fast. And as one of the things we did, I think I was trying online on that live stream to instruct Mika how to adjust his truss rod. I kind of recall that happened, but this time it's a whole different perspective. We'll talk about how Mika became the guitarist he is, and what could I learn from Mika's path as becoming a professional musician in the modern age we live. How does he make a living, and where does his music come from, and things like that. So we're going to talk about playing guitar, making music for your living. Will be fun, will be exciting. I'm looking forward to it very much. So until next week, we'll have to wait. One more thing about that: keep a guitar close by. I think I asked Mika if he could show us a lick, if he could show us a cheat lick, something that sounds cool but isn't so difficult to play, because I couldn't. So I'm hoping that Mika would teach us one of his little secrets, one of his licks during that video. I'll try to learn it on the video. Keep your guitar at hand so you can learn it too. Okay, guys, thank you for your support. Guys, gals, take care of your loved ones. Stay safe. Peace, love, and good music.